Grasslands have excellent properties to recover land. Originally, this was actually a big clay terrace that was put in here. And as you can see, the grass grows abundant. I cut this with a scythe just a few weeks ago, and now the grass is back again. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. I'm going to share with you how grass has restorative factors, and if you properly understand the characteristics of grass, especially a grass blend, including clover and grasses of various types, especially native grasses, that you can restore any area. In fact, I'm going to replicate this at the barn site, and I'll grow grass on clay and show you how it works. So again, this grass was cut a couple weeks ago, and it was mounded in place, and then we had a bunch of rains. Now, grass is going to be determinant on the amount of water it can get, and this has been able to get a lot of water. But the original grass cut from the top section here was mounded down here in a pile and has since dried out. Now, this is not suitable for feeding animals because it has been rained on a couple times, and what you'll soon see is that it will mold and it'll come up with different kinds of funguses starting to grow. But otherwise, you can see the grass is holding the soil in place, providing bird habitat, providing protection to the soil. Over here is the pile that I put in the back of the truck, and you can see how grass has properties that allow you to smother out the other grasses, exclusion, to create an area where you can start growing. So if you have a grass area, you can go from, if you know how, from bare soil to grass, allow the grass to grow long, cut it with a scythe, properly stack it, and even use an exclusion method, which we taught in our grass-fed garden, that eliminates all the weeds and eliminates everything, makes it ready to plant. So do you really need a tiller? No. You could mound grass in place, rake it aside, fork it with a broad fork, come back and just simply plant in it, and then put the grass back around your new starts in order to mulch and retain moisture in the soil. Now, I just cleared this spot and put it in the back of the truck because I'm going to take it over and use it at another site. But you can see the ground is warm. Everything on the ground is decomposed or killed. You can see a lot of little microorganisms, but there will be grass seeds in here. So if this area was left, even some deer manure in there. If this area was layered with some manure and then layered with grass, the grass would suppress the seeds coming from the manure. It would provide habitat for worms and insects that decompose organic materials. However, it would leave behind grass seed. So if that area was ever exposed again, because see, we have a bare spot here. You can see the clover. It killed off the clover. Clover is a nitrogen fixing plant, putting nitrogen in the soil. It killed it off. It even started killing some of the grass. But within a week with sunshine, the grass will sprout and it'll come right back. This won't end up being a bare spot. It'll end up more like what's over there. So the grass has a restorative property to put roots down in the soil to hold earthworks in place. It also has a feed property where you can feed it to animals and convert it to protein. It also has the property that you can use it as a mulch or compost in order to keep down the weeds in your garden, to be more selective about what's in the garden. And then ultimately, it will restore itself once the seed bank is there with grass again. Now, here's what's interesting about that. If we think about it from an evolutionary standpoint, grass that grows long, it doesn't grow 20 feet tall. While there are some grasses that do, like Sudan grasses and stuff, actually these pampas grasses over there that people use for landscaping do. Eventually the grass will fall over and mat itself down. Even where I've been walking to put grass in the back of the vehicle, it mats itself down. That matting excludes other species of plants, but leaves behind the grass seed. Eventually, the decomposing creatures will decompose that grass to make a great soil, great topsoil, and then ultimately the grass will come back again. And this is how you build up loamy soil that's full of nutrients, that has good airflow, that ultimately is perfect to plant in. Now, if you're going to mound grass up, you always mound it up in a level area away from your hills, because if I mounted the grass up over here, it would leave a slope that has no protection. And so when it rains, it could erode. When you use grass properly, so for example, if we were going to cut this for feed, we would have mounded this up in an area where it can stay dry, because the grass plus water, the sugar and starches start converting as well as creatures will start eating that stuff. But it simply can fork it up, and here's an example of that white mold that gets on here. And by the way, my allergies are going crazy. Grass tends to protect itself with allergens, pollen especially, but it's manageable if you get enough exposure to it. My point being is that grass is a wonderful resource. A lot of times folks will cut their grass short, and I even cut it short out here in the front because the people get upset about it if it's long. It's okay for the irises to be long, but not okay for the grass to be long. It doesn't make sense to me. That's why we're moving. That's why we're setting up the Prosperity Homestead at a different location. But ultimately, the grass allowed to grow about hip high in an agricultural setting, I can bring in animals to eat this down. So sheep, for example, are grazing animals. There's a lot of ruminant animals that would graze, but you cannot graze animals on slopes. So you're still going to have some aspect of management on slopes, and that's why we encourage our terracing systems in place. So this could be, for example, an access point for animals to come across between two paddocks, but these hills would be limited to small animals for short periods of time, or scythed and thrown in with animals that are impounded a little bit longer on level spaces. The animals walking through the grass, and this is the last restorative factor of grass. I mentioned before that the deer, when the grass was cut in here at the wrong time, the deer actually caused erosion because their hooves clawed into slopes and hills. If it's done at the right time, the deer will actually walk through the soil when it's long, knock it down like this, and then create little indents in the ground where seed and water will accumulate. And because the grass is holding that moisture, will actually sprout more grass and cause the grass density to increase, which increases the root mass, captures additional carbon, and then ultimately sustains hills and slopes. So you may be cutting your hills and slopes a little bit taller and less frequently, and then your level areas more frequently, either using animal impact or actually mowing it. You know, if you want a mowed path, you get a mowed path. But just understand the power of grass. Multiple species of grass rather than a single species of grass. Overseed it. And then also there are other types of grasses that have productivity, such as oats and wheat and other things like that. Now, I'm saying grass in a general category and then including oats and including clover and other alfalfa and stuff. I'm kind of drawing back to cover crop. By the way, you can see all the little bees in the clover here. Essentially cover the soil, keep it maintained. I'm even going to keep a little dusting of stuff here on top of this area that's been cleared out to make sure we have a little bit of moisture. And as you'll see in the next video, which is where I'm spreading this grass on an area where we're trying to establish grass, we'll talk specifically about soil pH, the application of other materials. And this right here was clay. It had a slight layer of really poor compost on it. But essentially what's in this area here was originally this red clay, but now it's starting to change color. It's starting to change color because the grass roots are down inside there. It's pushing organic material or carbon down into the soil. It's pulling nitrogen out of the atmosphere. It's pulling carbon out of the atmosphere, and it's building something of value. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. If you've got questions about establishing grass and pasture, even in the most undesirable circumstances, be sure to ask your questions at www.prosperityhomestead.org. And I'm going to get back to work gathering this up. I got some stuff to rake in the back, and then we will go over to the property and spread this out thinly to start establishing grass in a new location. I will show you, you can establish grass on red Virginia clay. You don't need much topsoil to do it, and then you can start building topsoil quickly and easily using these grass-fed methods. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next podcast.